In 1996, Janet March disappeared into thin air from her home in a suburb of Nashville, Tennessee. It was one of the most prolific cases of our time and is still sort of kind of a mystery. In 2020, I joined with my partner in crime, 𝐼𝐚𝐬𝐞, to study this case in depth and to bring it to you in two parts. Well, for those of you that like a longer video, I'm now combining it into one long video, but the two smaller parts will remain in a Janet March playlist that I will create in conjunction with this video. And I hope you enjoy it. Hope you've had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, and see you soon.
Keto and crime, keto and crime. We uncover the grime on keto and crime. Keto and crime, keto and crime. Now is the time for keto and crime.
Hey everyone, welcome to Keto and Crime and Thought Crime. Today we're getting into part one of the Janet March case. Part two, good friend and fellow comedian Michelle Muldoon will take you through that, and we hope a very comical fashion. We had a lot of fun. But let's get into part one, the overview of the case. The Janet March case was a case that happened in my hometown, near my hometown of Nashville, Tennessee, in the wealthy suburb of Forest Hills. Janet was a children's book illustrator that disappeared on August Day in 1996, never to be found again. The chief suspect was her husband, Perry March. Perry Ava March was born in 1961 in 𝐲𝐿𝐼𝐚, Indiana, to Arthur and 𝐼𝐚 March. Both of them were of Eastern European descent with Jewish heritage. Arthur was a U.S. Army pharmacist, and in 1970, Perry's mother, 𝐼𝐚, died in mysterious circumstances. The cause of death on her death certificate was anaphylactic shock as a result of a mixture of medicines she was taking, prescribed medicine she was taking. However, it was considered kind of sketchy in the East Chicago Jewish community about actually what happened to her. But anyway, the Marches then relocated to Michiana, Michigan, where Perry attended the La Lumumba School in LaPorte, Indiana, just across the border. He was an excellent student and was a martial arts aficionado, achieving the rank of black belt. Arthur March retired from the U.S. military in 1978, having reached the rank of lieutenant colonel, and his pension was his chief income after that, which will play an important part in the story later on. Perry attended the University of Michigan and pursued a pre-law program majoring in Asian studies, which I thought was kind of unusual, but it was at the University of Michigan that he met his future wife and, unfortunately, the victim in our story, Janet Gail Levine. Was born February 20th, 1963, in Nashville, Tennessee. Her father was Lawrence Levine, a native New Yorker and a very wealthy and successful attorney near Nashville, Tennessee, and his wife, Carolyn. She grew up, like I said, in the wealthy suburb of Forest Hills, Tennessee, very active in the local Jewish community, attended the very prestigious University School in Nashville. I know that school well. I've done some catering at that school back when I was a chef. So a very, very well-known, very good school, and she graduated with honors, achieving the rank of vice president in her class. She then went to the University of Michigan, where her father attended, and there she met Perry. She majored in art at the University of Michigan and met Perry during her sophomore year. Their first date was a temple journey during the Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah, and from there they were pretty much inseparable. They married shortly thereafter, and after graduation, Perry pursued a career as a futures broker, and the two moved to Chicago, Illinois, where he was a broker for Oppenheimer and Company. However, Janet's family was very close-knit, and they wanted their daughter and their new, what they considered a nice boy, who they loved Perry. They really considered him part of the family, but they wanted them closer to them. So Lawrence, after speaking with his daughter and wife, agreed that if Perry would apply to the Vanderbilt University, which is a very prestigious, almost Ivy League university in Nashville, Tennessee, would apply there for law school, he would pay not only his tuition, but their living expenses. Janet communicated this to Perry, and Perry, who had grown tired of being a futures broker at that time, which is a very stressful job, agreed that it was a good idea. A couple of years later, they relocated to Nashville, Tennessee after Janet completed her art degree at the Art Institute of Chicago. They moved immediately to Nashville. He enrolled at the law school at Vanderbilt University and excelled. He also became a contributor to the local law review and was considered driven by most of his classmates. Very hard-hitting, wanted to be an attorney very badly, and pursued his study with abandon. In the meantime, Janet started being a freelance children's book illustrator and was the mother to their two young children, a son named Samson and a daughter named 𝐼𝐸𝐯 after Perry's deceased mother. Perry achieved something of notoriety by being hired by very prestigious Nashville law firm Bass, Berry & Sims. Now, I know a little bit about Bass, Berry & Sims. When I was a courier, I actually delivered a lot of packages to Bass, Berry & Sims. It's a swank little office down at the top of a huge skyscraper in downtown Nashville. Very waspy firm, which would mean white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, at least in the 80s and 90s. So the fact that they hired Perry, who was of Jewish descent, I don't know if you would call him a good Jewish boy the way the Levines did, but he was the first full-time, non-white Anglo-Saxon Protestant hired by that firm. They're, very integrated now, but in the 80s and 90s, that necessarily wasn't the case. I thought that was interesting. And he excelled there as a lawyer. The firm kind of specialized in financial matters, so it was corporate law. So the money was good, and Perry did very well there. But the Levines still were their major source of income. The Levines took very good care of their daughter, and they wanted them to do well. So they helped them purchase a home in the very wealthy suburb of Forest Hills, Tennessee, near where they lived. Now, Forest Hills is a suburb just outside of Nashville. It's swank. Not a lot of crime there. Huge homes. I would say the average income there is high six figures. In 1991, two very important things happened. One, Arthur March, Perry's father, remember, the retired Army pharmacist, contacted his son wanting to know if he could move to Nashville, Tennessee, and would Perry help him. Perry, of course, said yes, but it ended up being Lawrence Levine actually helping the former military man relocate to Nashville. They even let Arthur live in their home. But it turned out that Arthur had just filed bankruptcy and was being pursued by the former landlord of his apartment in the Chicago area. And he actually lied to the Levines, not telling them he was a retired Army pharmacist, but telling them he was a Green Beret, although this was contradicted by his service records. Also along this time, Perry got himself into a spot of trouble at Bass, Berry & Sims when a paralegal came forward accusing someone, later found out to be Perry, of writing very filthy, disgusting, provocative letters to her at work. It was later found out that Perry was the author of these letters because he kind of gave himself away. We would find that would be a trend later in his life, giving away too much information. But in the letters, he described himself as being captivated by her body and also admitting that he was married, but could not help himself from fantasizing about her, and then went on to very descriptively tell her how he wanted to pleasure her. It was found out that it was them. The law firm, not wanting to get themselves mixed up in a scandal, decided to handle it internally. They set up a hidden camera monitoring her desk and actually saw Perry in the act sliding one of the letters onto her desk. In late 1991, the firm forced Perry to sign an agreement to pay the unnamed paralegal a settlement of $25,000, the first half of which was paid in installments monthly. The other half was paid in a lump sum toward the end of 1991. The paralegal was not exactly happy with the firm's treatment of it, although they did kind of take care of her, I think, but they weren't as quick to act as I think she would like. She ended up taking a long vacation from the firm and then resigned herself, and then to kind of lessen their liability, the firm let Perry go shortly after he signed the agreement. He did manage to keep these payments secret from Janet, but it took a huge toll on their marriage because he was working a lot of overtime. He was doing some financial activities, investments and stuff that she wasn't aware of. Also the strain that her father was kind of his father was kind of mooching off her father. There was a lot of discord in the family, and also the fact he had a wandering eye, as evidenced by the letters he wrote the paralegal. So the two started arguing a lot, and even Janet's parents, who loved Perry still like a son, realized that perhaps the marriage was in trouble. They encouraged Janet and Perry to seek marriage counseling, which they did for the better part of the 90s. Now, Perry March never really told his family why he was let go from Bassbury Sims. In fact, he told them that he resigned of his own accord. And as a result, his father-in-law, always wanting to be a good father to both his children, Perry being one of them, allowed Perry to come on as an associate attorney at Levine Orr, his very prestigious law firm, where Perry did represent some very high-profile clients, including nightclub owners, celebrities. He also did pro bono work for the Nashville Jewish Community Center and became a member of that board, being very well liked in Nashville's close-knit Jewish community, while Janet continued to illustrate children's books and was very successful at it. However, she started to kind of distance herself from her friends. Her and Perry were fighting more than ever, and this continued into 1996. She had busied herself with her career as well as decorating their $650,000 home in Forest Hills, purchased in part mostly by her parents. And by all accounts, it should have been a great marriage. However, it wasn't. Perry was becoming more and more volatile and violent toward Janet verbally. She insisted that he seek psychiatric help, which he did. He started seeing a psychiatrist in late 1996, in which Janet went with him. But he started to spend more and more time away from the home. In fact, he rented a condominium in Nashville for himself. He said it was because he was spending so many late nights at the office, he didn't want to disturb Janet and the children when he came home, so he started spending a lot of time there. They even fought in front of their children, and it was just a bad situation. August 14th, 1996, the couple's housekeeper came to the house saying that, and later recalled that Janet seemed very withdrawn. She was spending a lot of time on her computer. She saw a book on starting over after divorce on her night table that she had recently been reading, and just seemed very withdrawn. After Janet's disappearance, a large manila envelope with her name and address, with the address of the house and Janet's name, was found, and inside of it contained all the information that you would ever want to know on the whole Bassbury Sims paralegal incident. So everybody believes that Janet had indeed found out what happened to her husband and why he left Bassbury Sims. In addition, somehow Perry was having trouble making the last of his payments to the paralegal and had asked to push those off, and Janet had found out about that as well. So it was a little bit heated around the March house. Finally, after much soul searching, Janet reached out to her mom, Carolyn, and the two agreed to go see a divorce attorney on August 16th. However, on August 15th, two cabinet makers arrived at the Forest Hills home to install a cabinet. They were the last two to see Janet March. They said that she was there. She closely supervised their work, and that her and Perry's conversation seemed strange, even though Perry was playing with the children. They finished their work in about an hour, hour and a half, and left, and they would be the last people to see Janet March alive. August 15th, the Levines received a late-night call from their son-in-law saying that he and Janet had gotten into a terrible argument about 8 p.m. after they had put the children to bed. She was incensed that he was spending a lot of time away from home at the condo and in hotels, and that she had told him she was going to leave for a few days to clear her head. 12 days was the number he gave them, and had gathered up her passport, her clothing, her art supplies, and driven away in her Volvo 850. He also said she had taken $1,500 in cash and a bag of marijuana, which seemed very strange to the Levines because as far as they knew, their daughter didn't smoke or take any sort of mood-altering substance. And he also presented a written list of chores that Janet wanted him to do to kind of make up for the fact he never did anything around the house, and that she had left around 8:30. In addition to the Levines, he also called his brother, who still lived in Chicago, and a friend of Janet's to tell them the same. At first, people could understand that maybe Janet had wanted to get away from it, but as time went on, Carolyn, who was a very early version of a helicopter parent, Carol Levine, wanted to know where her daughter was and was insisting that Perry file a missing persons report, even though Perry insisted that they should give Janet the 12 days that she had wanted before they started to look for her. Carolyn was only mildly, calmed by this, but agreed to let them wait. By August 17th, the Levines were incensed and insisted to start at least search for their daughter. Perry and Lawrence drove to the airport looking for the Volvo. They did not find it. They also became concerned because the part-time nanny that take care of their grandchildren told them that a couple of days after they had searched for her car at the airport, Perry had told her that he was sure Janet had gone to California, something that he had not told the Levines. Shortly before this happened, Perry's father, Arthur, had left the Levines' home and relocated to Mexico. This is not unusual for a lot of retirees to do because the money goes further in a developing country. So he began calling Arthur, letting him know what had happened. And by August 23rd, the Levines were incensed. First of all, it was the first week of school, which they contended that their daughter would never miss the two children's first day of school. And again, when she did not show up for Sampson's planned birthday party, which she planned on August 25th, they were sure that something was wrong, and they themselves contacted the police and filed a missing persons report. It was along the same timeline that Perry secured a criminal defense attorney for himself, which everyone thought was really strange. Nashville Police Department started an official inquiry about the missing Janet March on August 29th. First under scruples was the alleged list of 12 chores that she had left for Perry. None of it mentioned anything about Sampson's birthday party, getting the kids to their first day of school, anything like that. So already that list was under suspect. And in most murders, the spouse is considered suspect number one. So Perry became that. He became more and more despondent, started running his mouth to friends and family, basically alluding that Janet had ruined his life. And that was very surprising because no one had ever heard him speak violently or angrily about Janet. They had heard them argue, but had never heard either of them speak really disparaging words about the other when they weren't present. After questioning Perry and indicating that there was some things on the list that weren't in the same handwriting, they had him submit a handwriting sample. It was discovered that some of the writing on that list were indeed his handwriting. At that time, they told him they were going to search and seize the computer hard drive from his home. Before that could happen, though, Perry removed it. The police got there to remove the hard drive. The hard drive was just gone. Not wiped like a normal person would do if they thought they were going to be searched. The hard drive was just missing out of the computer. They never were able to find it. And a couple of days after this, fearing his arrest was imminent, Perry took his children and went to Chicago to stay with his brother for a few days. September 7th, Janet's Volvo was found in a perfectly backed-in position at a local Nashville apartment complex. This was strange to her family and friends because not only was all of Janet's stuff, including her passport, clothes, money, everything found in that car, but anybody that knew Janet said she was a terrible driver and would have never backed into a space anywhere. So this became suspect. It was noted by Perry's family and friends in Chicago that by this time Perry had begun referring to Janet in the past tense as if he knew she would never be coming back. The police searched Perry's Jeep, the rest of the house. They found some incriminating fibers in Perry's Jeep. It looked as though perhaps Janet had been in there around the time of her disappearance. And Perry became suspect number 1. Along this time, the Levines also hired a private investigator to investigate their son-in-law. It was after the police searched the woods around their Forest Hills mansion, using thermal scans to search for remains, that Perry's lawyer that he had secured before leaving for Chicago informed the police Perry would no longer cooperate with the investigation. The Levines were very well liked in the Nashville community, and so the local Nashville paper, the Tennessean, ran, and their accompanying partner paper, the Nashville Scene, ran a series of articles on the disappearance of Janet March, in which Perry was interviewed, and Perry became known for running his mouth. He spoke about Janet in the past tense, badmouthed her as much as possible, all the time maintaining his innocence that she had disappeared of her own accord. As the heat turned up, Perry decided it was time for him to get out of the country, and he left Chicago and took his children to Mexico, to a little ranch house outside of Guadalajara, where his father was acting as a groundskeeper for a wealthy family and resort. So he took his family and moved. The Levines only found out that he had left for Mexico when they showed up for a court-awarded visitation with their grandchildren in the Chicago area in 1999, only to be informed by Perry's brother that he had indeed gone to Mexico. While in Mexico, he met and married Carmen Rojas, a local Mexican woman who already had 3 children. They soon had another child, bringing the total of children up to 6. And Perry practiced some sort of law in Mexico. We're not real sure if he was some sort of paraprofessional, but whatever kind of law he practiced, that's how he made his living. While he was in Mexico, the Levines did 2 things. They filed for custody of their grandchildren and also filed a wrongful death civil litigation against Perry. In both of those, Perry came out on the bottom. In the civil litigation suit, the Levines had to tearfully have their daughter Janet declared legally dead, and they were awarded $113 million in wrongful death against Perry. Perry did not appear in court for this. He was no longer allowed to practice law in Tennessee because he had been disbarred for illegal activities, nothing to do with the Levines. But he did retain some lawyers that later on were able to get this judgment thrown out. But he was found guilty in the civil case and ordered to pay $113 million to the Levines. Also, shortly after that, they filed for custody of their grandchildren based on the outcome of the civil case, and were actually awarded custody of their grandchildren, which they tried to cash in on in May of 2000. They actually went to the school outside Guadalajara, Mexico, picked up the children, took them to Mexico City, and then flew back to the United States. Perry immediately left the rest of his family in Mexico to fly back to the United States to get his children back. In October of 2000, a Nashville lawyer took Perry's side in this matter and ordered the children returned to their father in Mexico. Lawrence Levine and his son Mart Levine, also an attorney, were able to file appeals and enough stays to get the order stayed until 2001, March 2001, when a Circuit Court of Appeals ordered the children returned to their father. And for a while, we go dark. Perry's in Mexico, the Levines are in Nashville, the children have been returned to their father. But Perry, ever the one not to let things die, decides to try something. Still suspecting that he's a suspect in his wife's murder, he actually sends a newspaper clipping in 2002 to the detectives working the case of some women enjoying themselves at the Greek Olympic Games, saying that one of them is Janet. However, none of the people in the picture resembled Janet Levine, so it was quite a laughing matter, if you can imagine that. Shortly after this, Perry and his New Mexican wife Carmen opened a restaurant near Guadalajara in 2004, and they ran that pretty successfully for a while. However, the Nashville detectives working the case were not about to let the case die. They finally were able to get a grand jury indictment against Perry in late 2004 after calling 59 witnesses. They had to work closely with the Federal Bureau of Investigation because he was in Mexico, and finally got an order in August of 2005 to have him extradited. Mexican police arrested Perry at his restaurant and then took him to the Guadalajara airport, putting him on a plane to Los Angeles, where he was returned to Nashville. In Nashville, he was immediately put into the Corrections Detention Center, where he busied himself not only running his mouth about the case, but also made friends with some other inmates. One of the friends he made in prison was Russell Ferris, a small-time con and professional stoolie. He had gotten a lot of sentences reduced by turning over on other people, so this is the kind of person that Perry made friends with, and he basically not only told him that he had dealt with his wife, but also asked him, when he got out of prison on jail on bond, would he kill his parents-in-law. Ferris immediately went to his lawyer, told him what happened. They arranged for him to be wired and pursue another conversation with March. March and he went over a plan, including giving him an alias by the name of Billy Glivens. He was to go to their home in Forest Hills and kill them both. Part of this was an escape plan for Ferris, and that included Perry's father, Arthur. He arranged a phone call between his father and Ferris, where they discussed the plan. During that plan, Arthur, on a recorded line, gave Ferris a lot of advice on how to carry out a murder, to wear surgical gloves, and also how to kind of keep the police off his trail. After the deed was done, he was to fly into Houston, call Arthur, and then fly into Guadalajara, where Arthur would pick him up and give him refuge at his home in Mexico. Okay, the plan was going well, supposedly, as far as Perry thought. Ferris was released from jail. Instead of letting him out on bond, as they had made March think, they actually transferred him to another jail. While in jail, they gave him a unlisted phone to call Arthur, let him know that the Levines were dead and that he was in Houston and on his way to Guadalajara. He gave him the arrival of a name and number of a plane and time of a plane, and Arthur showed up to meet him at the airport at Guadalajara, and he was immediately taken into custody by FBI agents. And it was at this point that Arthur completely turned over on his son and confessed to not only trying to assist in an attempted murder of the Levines, but also that his son had indeed told him that he killed his wife, Janet March, and that Arthur had helped him get rid of the body. According to Arthur, basically, Perry told him over the phone, according to Arthur, allegedly, that the two had gotten into a shoving argument in which he feared for his own life against a 120-pound woman, unarmed, and had beaten her to death. He then wrapped up her body, put it in the back of his Jeep. His father then returned from Mexico. They met each other at the airport. They drove to Kentucky with Janet in the trunk, where they stopped at a local hotel. Perry was feeling tired, his father said, so he stayed at the hotel while his elderly father drove the car with Janet's body into the rural area of Kentucky, finding an area where some brush was being burned, and disposed of her body by putting her body into a hole that some of the people working on that site had dug, and her clothes in another, and then allowed the fire to take place.
His own father, Arthur, testified his son confided that he killed Janet during a fight with a wrench.
He agreed to show detectives exactly where they had put the body. Detectives followed him there. However, no trace of Janet's body was ever found. But Arthur, who did this for the promise to only receive 18 months in prison, did allow his taped testimony to be presented in court because he was very sick with heart problems at the time. This was the key evidence, along with the testimonies of a couple of other prisoners in jail that had kind of told on Perry, because he loved to run his mouth. That's the one thing he loved to do, is run his mouth, and he ran his mouth to other prisoners, not only confessing to wanting to have the Levines killed, but his wife's murder as well. August 17th, 2006, Perry was found guilty of attempted murder on his parents-in-law, the Levines, as well as the second-degree murder of Janet March. He was sentenced to 56 years in prison.
Perry March is a killer. A jury convicted him in the death of his wife, Janet.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Perry Avram March, as to count one, guilty of second-degree murder.
I interviewed him here in prison not long after that verdict in 2006. Would he finally confess?
I know for a fact that I had nothing to do with her demise or disappearance.
And that's where he sits today, even though he still runs his mouth to reporters as often as possible. Arthur March, even though the prosecutors had originally agreed to allow him to be sentenced to 18 months, the judge wasn't having it and actually sentenced him to 5 years, though he died of heart complications 4 months into his prison sentence. The Levines tried their best to go on about their lives. By this time, the two children were teenagers and were allowed to choose where they wanted to live, even though Perry tried to have them sent back to his wife in Mexico, although they did stay with the Levines in Nashville. And that's where we end the trial of Janet March. And it was a long one. It was a long case. It took 10 years. The sad thing is her body was never recovered, although we're pretty sure of what happened. It wasn't that Perry March was just convicted on circumstantial evidence, the testimony of his father, but evidence of Janet having been in the Jeep post-mortem. His Jeep post-mortem had also been found by detectives, so it wasn't just per diem evidence. But all that aside, he did very blatantly try to have his parents-in-law killed, so that's enough right there. But that's where that case ends. Maybe one day we'll know the whole story, but all we know is that she's gone and he's in prison. And with that, I'll sum up part 1 of the Janet March case. We'll be back with good friend Michelle Muldoon, who will take you through the case again and give some more highlights of it, hopefully in a humorous, entertaining way. And I'll be back real soon. Everyone, welcome to Thought Crime and Keto and Crime. Today I have my good friend, comedian Michelle Muldoon. We're going to be discussing the Janet March case. For those of you that watched part 1 where I did the overview of the case, now we're going to get into some high-class chat about it.
High-class chat. Oh, good. You've already talked about an overview of the case. Well, those are my notes, are a lot about what happened.
First of all, Michelle, tell my audience who you are.
Oh, hi, I'm Michelle Muldoon. I'm
Hi.
Tracy's friend, sometimes comedian, you know.
She's actually very funny. She doesn't give herself enough credit. But
in
her day job, because we both have day jobs,
yes.
She's an interpreter for the hearing impaired, correct?
I am. I'm a sign language interpreter. I am not doing any of that right now.
No. Every time I see them come up on the news where they've always got the interpreters, I'm like, I wish that was Michelle.
I know. I don't. I'm glad it's not me. It's too much. It's like I'd be so afraid I was gonna fuck it up. And then they're all like, we can trace back this terrible outbreak to this one specific terrible interpreter that got on the news. News at 11. Anyway, I have actual nightmares about that. So let's move on.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. But okay, yeah, Janet March case.
Janet March case.
Let's dive into it.
Yes. So I was, I guess, like 8 when this happened.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember a whole lot of it, like, while it was happening.
I don't either. It's not one that I was real familiar with, and having lived in Nashville almost 20 years now. I was surprised I didn't know about it, but
which seems kind of crazy that the both of us would have missed this in the aftermath, because the whole thing, I mean, it took 10 years to wrap it up, even.
yeah, and it's not solved. They've never found a body that I know of,
Well,
unless you have information I don't.
they have not found a body.
All right.
However, how much of the case have we gone over already? A basic overview?
Yes, just a basic overview. When it happened, the controversy about her and Perry met, Chicago, him becoming a lawyer, him kind of mooching off her parents.
Yes. Okay. Great.
And then he got dismissed from Bassbury Sims, to whom I have delivered many packages when I was a courier.
No kidding. That's called a personal connection.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Like, for sending really sexually explicit letters to a paralegal.
Yeah, like I read some of them and I'm like,
oh, I did not, and because I can't, not good though. Let's tell me about it.
They're not, I wouldn't call them sexy, I would call them just creepy. I mean, it was like
such a thin line.
Yeah.
There's a fine line between sexy and creepy.
Stuff like, I can't wait to pleasure you, and I want my tongue in places, and just like, ew.
Oh, God.
And he did them anonymously, so like this paralegal had no idea who they were even coming from.
Apparently he didn't do it that anonymously, because it seems like they didn't have a hard time figuring out that it was him.
No.
Here's the thing. It sounds like from the very start, Perry March is a colossal wang, and it just really not anywhere near as smart as he seems to think that he is.
No, and I think that went back to his dad, because his dad was an interesting character.
Oh my, Arthur.
Arthur, not much
Arthur
on his
March.
mom that I could find.
No, I didn't hear anything about his mom.
But she had passed away, I think, when he was a teenager or something. But his father, Arthur, was kind of a know-it-all, and I think that's where he got it. And
literally, probably the reason that he ended up being convicted was because his dad also can't keep his fucking mouth shut.
Exactly. I'm like, you're in Mexico. You're living in Mexico. You're living in a foreign country. How hard is it just to keep your mouth shut?
How hard is it just keep your mouth shut?
Yeah.
They didn't have a body. This is the thing. It's infuriating. You are an attorney, sir.
Mm-hmm.
You should know better than that. Oh my gosh.
But he loved to run his mouth, and that was
his problem.
Yeah, he ran it to everybody.
Biggest problem. The thing is, if you look at any of his interviews that he gave, he was not winning any Emmys for those. No, he was looking back on that. It's clear that he knows what happened to her, and that he's trying to like put the scent off of himself.
My first indication is when they, what I've researched, they were pretty atypical articles and stuff. They didn't really put forth an opinion. They were actually pretty, generic, as media used to be. Now most media has a spin to it, but these didn't.
Sure.
And they were talking about how the calls he made to his dad, his brother, her parents, the night that she supposedly walked out and said she would be gone for 12 days.
For 12 days, which is a
odd number.
It's
not an odd number. It's actually an even number, but it's odd.
Number, but it's a weird number.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's like, you're a bad liar.
Mm-hmm.
He's putting too much detail into his lie.
Exactly. And just the calls to her parents and just immediately letting them know that she was gone. Had they seen her? It's like he was almost too concerned, if that makes sense.
Right. And she left a to-do list.
Yeah, of like chores, because evidently the majority of their fights was because he sat on his duff and didn't do anything around the house.
Which, honestly, that's probably true.
Yeah. But honestly, they lived in Forest Hills. They could have hired a housekeeper. In
a 5,000 square foot house. And Forest Hills, I think, for people who don't know, if there was like a Yelp review for Forest Hills, it would have $4 signs next to it.
Yeah. I mean, to put it in proper context, Dr. Witherspoon, Reese Witherspoon's father, that's where they lived before.
Yeah.
He's I think, cardiac surgeon. Her mom was a professor at Vanderbilt University. Big money. Even
Also
before,
$4 jobs
yes.
to live in the
So,
$4 sign neighborhood.
so Michelle and I are not living in Forest Hills.
We are sure not. No.
I've delivered food to houses in Forest Hill.
How was it?
Good, and they tip real well. I
Oh,
mean,
well, that's good. I feel like
yeah,
it could go either way in a $4
yeah,
signs neighborhood
yeah,
where they tip either really well or not at
yeah.
all.
Best tip I ever got was when I was delivering in Beverly Hills. It's when I was in LA for comedy, and my courier job let me pick up some shifts there, and I delivered to a huge house off of Mulholland Drive, like the famous curvy,
Yeah.
where the Hollywood Hills, and had no idea who the house belonged to. The housekeeper came to the door and said, "Oh," and he said, "Bring everything in. He just doesn't like stuff placed against his wall, like
Okay.
deliveries, because it was a huge house. It was like movie posters everywhere. I'm like, this dude's a producer, and I wish I could figure out who it was." But anyway, I put it all down and put it all out, and then she handed me $150 in cash, just like nothing, when I walked out.
Amazing.
But that's like $15 to that
I was
person.
gonna say, yeah,
Yeah.
in Nashville money, that's like it's like worth a third of that. What's the
Yeah.
exchange rate on LA money to Nashville money?
Probably about 10 times.
10 times. Okay. Good question. So, okay. So the babysitter says that the day that Janet disappears, she's at the computer all day.
Mm-hmm.
I guess presumably typing up this to-do list. Wink, wink.
Wink.
Really what she was probably doing was figuring out that her husband was a sexual harassment dynamo.
Interesting you should say that, because later on, I believe it was either not her sister, but her friend, because I don't think she, a friend of hers that were kind of helping her around the house, said that they had found a manila envelope the day before she disappeared.
Let me find. Yes, that with her
Name on it.
name and address on it.
That had all the information from the Bass Berry Sims paralegal incident inside of it. Yes.
So theoretically, she had learned just the day before she quote unquote walked out that even more so, let's be honest, she already knew that her husband was a dick, but
Oh yeah.
but now she's got confirmation, and probably that he's a different sort of dick than she was thinking this whole time, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We have to think about. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just thinking, people will wonder, why would she put up with it? Well, first of all, it was the 90s. Not as hard, not as easy to walk out and get a divorce at that time. Easier than it was in the 50s, but not quite where we are now. But she also came from a very wealthy Jewish family. That family was very important. So she had 2 kids. She worked from home as a children's book illustrator. She kind of had it made in the shade in one regard. So I don't think she was willing to shake it up until maybe that was the breaking point. Where
I would. Yeah. There are a lot of reasons that people stay in relationships. Reportedly, they were fighting all the time.
Yeah.
But like, if you're just fighting all the time, like you said, you've got 2 kids, you're trying to make it work, thinking if only this happens, then everything will be fine. But no, that would be the breaking point for me.
Oh yeah. My breaking point would probably come a lot quicker than.
I mean, I think.
Yeah, I think yours would too, honestly. Yeah.
It would, but if I just understand why that would be that seems like a very obvious straw there.
Yeah. There'd be a night where I'd have one too many glasses of wine, and they'd end up out in the yard or something, with me pointing a gun at them or something.
Well, and then we would do a very different kind of.
Yeah.
It would be a very different story, I suppose, if you were Janet March, wouldn't it?
It would probably be.
It would have been the death. Would have been the death of Perry March at the hands of his scorned wife, Tracy Barclay. Which I don't know. That'd be fun. We'll put a pin in that.
I'm so sorry.
I like it. No, put a pin in that. I like it. So finally, 2 weeks after she's gone, Perry March decides that he's going to report her missing to the police. Because remember, she told him she was going to be gone for 12 days.
And her parents wanted to report her missing after like 3 days, but he said, let's give her the 12 days she gave us.
Well, and you know what? And people are mad at her parents for that, but like, at this point, they have no reason to like distrust him, you know? I mean, they have no reason to think that he has murdered her, certainly.
No. Perry is a like associate attorney or maybe even a junior partner at at her father's law firm. So the father works with him every day.
They have no reason to think that. And also I feel like everybody knew that they were fighting a lot and that they were having marital problems. And so it's like there's a lot of plausible deniability at that point where I was like, well, yeah, things were bad. Okay, but so then she misses her oldest son's birthday party that she had planned.
Yep.
And sent invitations to, and then misses his first day of school.
And the son, tells the teacher, I didn't even get to say goodbye to my mom, which was just heartbreaking.
Oh, God. I actually know somebody who went to school with him.
Wow. The son?
Like yeah. It was a weird time, it sounds like. Okay. So I paid a lot of attention in my notes to this timeline because it's so banana pants. Okay. So she goes missing, or quote unquote walks out. She goes missing for 12 days. At 14 days, the police are informed that she's gone and has been gone for 14 days and that she's missed her kid's first day of school because it's August 96.
Right.
So she's missed his first day of school and his birthday party that she planned. Okay. So then 9 days after that, what is 14 plus 9?
That is
23. It's 23
days.
So just over 3 weeks, so that after she's been gone, they find her car backed into a parking spot at an apartment complex. And all of her shit is in the car, including her passport and stuff.
Right.
And they think the scene looks staged.
Well, yeah. I mean, why would somebody that was leaving for 12-day vacation leave her?
Not bring all their shit with them.
Yeah.
Also,
her friends said that she was a terrible driver.
She was a terrible driver.
That's like me. If my car was found backed in perfectly,
like,
and I'm missing, my wife did it because she is the good driver that backs in everywhere. I would never even attempt to back in.
You heard it here first, y'all. If we ever find Tracy ever goes missing and her car is backed in somewhere, the wife did it. So then, at this point, the police are like, hold up, I think this might be murder. Like, it took them that long.
She just disappeared. She just walked like highway to heaven, just walked down the road and disappeared, you know.
Right.
And everybody thought that was okay.
I know. But also, this is 1996 in a $4 sign neighborhood.
Okay, true.
So,
true. There's no crimes happening there.
There's no crimes happening
except
there.
white-collar variety.
Right.
Yeah.
So then the police, in their continued infinite wisdom in this situation, tell Perry March that they are interested in the hard drive of the computer at the house. They said, we need that hard drive. So then they search the house after that. And wouldn't you know, the hard drive has been removed from the computer.
Who would
have thought that something like that could have happened?
Just gone. Not even wiped. Just gone.
Not even wiped. Just gone. Just gone. So at this point, Perry is on television all the time. He cannot stay off of television. And he is doing like bad dramatic reenactments of what he thinks a sad husband, a sad, bewildered husband is supposed to look like in an interview.
There was a Tennessean reporter that actually they interviewed on one of the documentaries I was able to watch that said that she was sitting there thinking the whole time, dude, shut up. No one wants to hear this.
I know. I think that's what everyone thought the whole time, and probably what his poor dead wife thought too.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, just shut up. So I actually just I watched Dominic Dunn's Power, Privilege, and Justice about this. It was on YouTube.
I saw that one too.
I did not want to pay money
No.
to watch a crime documentary.
No.
Okay.
That's why this one's always free, folks. Always free.
So he's just like on TV over here and on TV over there. And he won't stop talking about, we don't even know what happened. She just left. It's all fine. He's protesting too much. So then 3 weeks into the investigation, right, which is 5 weeks that she's been gone, he just fucks off to Chicago with the kids.
Yeah. Just bye.
Like an innocent person does.
Yeah, just ran with the hard drive, probably.
Probably. Where do you think he kept the hard drive?
I don't know. I don't know. Probably in the trunk of his car, as stupid as he was. I mean, I have no idea. I don't think they ever found the hard drive, but
No, I hadn't heard that they. I feel like if they had found the hard drive, there would have been more.
yeah, we would have had no more of the story. Because everything we know is still conjecture. It's still mainly based on the word of the author, his confession. That's all we know.
I believe it. I believe it.
I do too. I mean,
I do too.
he had no reason to lie. He was going to prison. I mean,
so all that stuff about being forced out of the law firm, this is like about when we find that out, right? Or like when the police find that out.
And his father-in-law, who had no idea when he hired him at his law firm. I find that rich people very conveniently just sweep things under the rug.
Or just like don't ask any follow-up questions. How many like $7 an hour jobs have you had to take a drug test for? And like, and like $300,000 a year jobs, they're like, no, just don't tell me anything. It's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, you stopped working at your other law firm? No follow-up questions.
And
Come on.
In context, Bassbury Sims is one of the most prestigious law firms in the country. They handle, so people just don't leave Bassbury Sims unless they move up to a higher position.
Or start sending
sexually
horribly explicit letters to paralegals.
Right.
It's kind of fucked up. I was glad that they law firm actually fired him.
Me too.
Instead of firing her.
Yeah. It shows that they weren't
1996
wanting to cover it. And they actually like helped with the agreement, so to speak, that he signed to pay her $25,000.
Which seems like not enough thousands of dollars.
No, but you have to think of it's 1990s money. That's probably the equivalent of
much
40,000, which
still not enough dollars.
That's true.
A prestigious law firm like that's crazy. But I digress.
But they still kind of swept it under the rug. They fired him and they made him sign that and pay her, and then kind of no one pressed charges. So maybe they did kind of sweep it under the rug in a way, but they did stand up for her, which is good.
Which is like more than
a lot of people would.
A lot of people get. Okay, so then 2 months after she's disappeared, her parents hold a memorial for her, realizing that at that point, the likelihood that she's still alive is low.
Yep.
Perry, in his infinite, totally not guilty wisdom, says publicly to anyone who will listen that it's too soon to have a memorial. And so he and the kids do not show up.
Yeah. Which, was tacky if nothing else.
At the very least, it was very tacky. And I really, really feel for those kids.
Me too.
Who didn't have that opportunity for that memorial with him. Yeah.
I mean, their mom was just gone. They didn't even get a chance to say goodbye to
her.
Right.
So then after he doesn't show up to the memorial, he fucks off to Mexico with the kids.
To his father's house.
Yes. Enter Arthur March.
Again.
allegedly ex-military. Everybody that talked about him was like, he claimed that he was a Green Beret. Like,
no one ever saw proof of that.
I guess maybe he had a Green Beret.
Yeah. I got a little red one.
And like a gun safe.
Yeah, possibly. But supposedly he was a caretaker for a wealthy family in Mexico. So had a house on their property, and that's where Perry and the kids ended up.
Yes, in a place outside of Guadalajara, in like a resort town, it sounds like. So from Mexico, Perry grows this terrible goatee and it keeps on giving interviews. It's bad. Have you seen the goatee?
Practices law, some sort of illegal, sort of paraprofessional something in Mexico. Which
I'm gonna say like pseudo legal. We'll say sub legal maybe.
Yeah.
Practices sub law. I don't know. I can't imagine
what he was doing. Contracts maybe. I don't know. Something.
I don't know. Anyway. Have you seen the goatee though? Did you see the goatee?
Yeah, that was bad.
The Mexico goatee.
That's deserving of at least, part of his prison sentence, if nothing.
Right. I mean, it's like he thought he was going to join the Backstreet Boys or something. It was not. I'm just saying, an innocent man doesn't grow that. I guess it was 90s, but whatever. So, he remarries a real hottie.
Yeah, who had
named
3
Carmen,
kids.
Who had 3 kids, and then they have one together.
So now we're up to 6 kids.
That's how many people are on a baseball team?
7, 8. In Arthur, they had exactly a baseball team there.
Yeah, exactly, a baseball. I knew you would know. I don't know. I should have asked you about a softball team.
I was very good, bitch.
I'm right. I'm just saying. I'm sorry. That was insensitive of me to ask you about baseball instead of softball. I mean to
field hockey and softball.
And I meant to ask you about baseball instead of softball. Yeah. I should have. That was insensitive. And I stand by the question.
Some people I knew were still surprised when I came out of the closet, even though I played softball and field hockey. I'm like,
well, so somehow now we're in May 2000. I guess he's just
ran under the radar,
living his life in Mexico. Unclear how long he kept the goatee.
Yeah,
I know that's the hard-hitting info that your listeners want, but I don't have any more information about the goatee.
Clearly, if Michelle had been an investigator on that case, that would have been like at least number 3 on her list.
Do you know how in like movies when they do like a timeline, have you ever seen like Sliding Doors? Where she changes her hair in one of the timelines so that it's like easier to remember?
Yeah.
In the like movie adaptation of this, you would have to have
different personifications of the beard.
Because the timeline goes on for so long.
I know. It's 10 years and
then more.
It's not even partially resolved. I mean, half of it in that they're in prison, but
right.
Where's her body? What did you actually do to her?
Well, yeah.
You're serving 56 years. You can tell us now.
Yeah, right. Well, we're skipping ahead to the end of the story.
They know.
Well, that's fine. I still
I'm sorry.
want to talk about it. No, it's all right. Somehow we're in May 2000.
Yeah.
My next note goes to May 2000, which was 20 years ago.
That's weird.
So sit with that for a moment. That was not 10 years ago. That was 20 years ago. So a judge decides that Carolyn and Larry Levine, Janet's parents,
right,
can have custody of the kids.
Right. So
they go to Mexico.
Well, he didn't show up for the trials. I mean, they sued for custody. He just didn't show up.
Right. So they were granted custody of the children. So then the parents, Carolyn and Larry Levine, go to Mexico, grab the kids from school, and fly them back to Nashville.
Right.
Perry is pissed.
As normally a parent would be, I suppose.
As normally a parent would be. So custody battle ensues, and then they have to return the kids to Mexico.
And then they sue him
And
for
then
wrongful
they
death.
sue them for wrongful death. And they win.
Several $1 million settlement.
Yes.
Can't remember the exact number, but it was a lot.
It was like, write it down. I
The
took
largest
such good
wrongful
notes
death
of it.
case awarded by Tennessee court at that time.
At that time, yes. Okay, so now, I don't know. So now I jump forward to summer of 2004. And my notes here say, summer 2004, full psychopath Perry March sends a magazine photo to the Nashville DA.
Mm-hmm. Saying that she was seen at the Olympic Games in Greece.
Mm-hmm.
And none of the women in the picture look like her.
She's like, no, it's that one. She looks different in Greece. It's the Mediterranean diet. You look different.
It's that one.
Yeah, it's the Mediterranean free spirit. It makes you look different. It makes you look like a different person.
Why did he even do that?
Because he can't stop.
That's what I'm
Because
saying.
he
It was
can't
over.
stop.
The Nashville courts reversed the $1 million judgment. He didn't have to pay it.
Yes.
In all essence, the investigation had ground to a stop. Keep your mouth
They
shut.
had no evidence. If he had just zipped it,
Mm,
it would have been over.
Yeah.
It would have been over. And he would have lived in Mexico with his hot wife and all their baseball team of kids.
and Arthur.
And Arthur, who owns a Green Beret.
And they could play baseball.
They could play baseball, and Mexico in paradise forever.
Yep.
But no. He was like, I don't know if the video of this goes anywhere, but for those listening I'm miming clipping a picture out of a magazine.
We're going to be the full videos on YouTube. So.
Oh, good. And he's going.
And then the audio will go to my podcast.
He says, I have an idea. Clip, 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 clip. I'm gonna just send this to the DA.
Yeah.
To really get him off my scent.
But he shaved the beard, so maybe he thought that would convince them.
Yeah, maybe. They were like, well, he doesn't look like a supervillain anymore.
And she sort of resembles Janet, this one, on a... Yeah, sort of.
If I had my glasses off... If I took my glasses off, I'd be like, oh my gosh, there she is. She's in Greece.
She's alive.
Or if I'd like touched my glasses and so there were like fingerprints on them,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
then I'd be like, he's an innocent man.
Yep.
So at this point, the DA indicts Perry March for murder and arranges for his extradition, despite the evidence being thin,
Real. No.
tenuous.
And again, his mouth. If he could have just sat and remained silent like most people that are accused of murder and let his lawyers work on it.
When it really goes off the rails for me. This is the point when this changes from just like a normal story to like full throttle white knuckle batshittery.
Mm-hmm.
So it says, noted dumbass Perry won't shut his fucking mouth.
Yep.
He will not do it. So he becomes friends with one Russell Nathaniel Ferris, noted East Nashville criminal.
He had to be the only. Now this is going to be awful, but I think he was probably the only like white criminal in East Nashville at that
100%. Well, actually, what are we talking? 2004? Maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not.
Well, whatever. You're not necessarily wrong. Okay, so
he's like the most redneck looking man I've ever seen in my life.
He is. He's got that like
Nashville.
wavy question mark
Mark,
tattoo on his throat.
Yeah. And what Perry didn't know is that he was a lifelong pigeon, that he liked to commit crimes and then get other people to talk to him. And then
tell people about it.
Yeah.
Police people.
Yeah.
So he's in there, I guess, on his own, like, attempted murder charge
Mm-hmm.
or something. Perry becomes friends with Russell Nathaniel the Riddler Ferris. And he's like, this guy seems trustworthy. I'm gonna ask him to kill my in-laws. Now, we have evidence of this.
Yeah, because he told everyone.
Because Ferris agrees to essentially get wired in jail. They're not in the same cell. They're in cells next to each other. And Ferris is like, yeah, I would love to record this.
Not to mention, you probably have Jerome and, I don't know, Tom in the next
Everyone
cell
else has
listening.
ears. It's not. Yes, also everyone else has ears. But, like, so he wears his wire, and there's audio. There's audio of Perry not only asking this dude to murder poor Carolyn and Larry, who have done nothing this whole time but, like, try to do what's best for their grandchildren and figure out what happened to their daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, he's like, also, check out Arturo in Mexico. He's got your back. I keep calling him Arturo. I think it's just Arthur.
It's Arthur. But you can Alejandro.
I mean, I'm just saying, throw a Hawaiian shirt on him. Arturo. He's like, also, Arthur March. That's ARTHURMARCH. He lives just outside. His address is, I mean, he's like, my dad's also gonna, he'll keep you after it's done.
An alias, but you need an alias.
Oh, but you need an alias. And he was, what was it? Givens?
Billy Givens?
Billy Givens.
Yeah.
It's Billy Givens. And he's like, great, sounds definitely like a real name.
Right.
I love it. So we got audio of him doing this and then offering his dad's like shelter and getaway.
Mm-hmm. Not to mention that his house is owned by whomever he works for, and he's just offering to harbor a criminal.
I did not know that. And that, of course it was.
He was a caretaker.
Of course he was a caretaker of someone else's home and just kept inviting people to come live there. Of course he did. I mean, do we think that Arthur had like a frontal lobe injury or something? Because he also made bad choices the whole way. From start to finish. The cops are like, I think we're ready to do some subterfuge and not just pre-tell Perry March what we're about to do, so that he can cover up his tracks. So they pretend like Ferris is getting out on bond and then send him to a different county jail, so that Perry thinks that
he's out.
That Ferris is out and is doing the deed.
And went immediately to Forest Hills to kill the Levins.
Yes. Yep. Was on his way to Forest Hills to kill the Levines. Okay. So, and then he starts calling Arthur a bunch.
I feel like Billy Givens, since he's going by this alias, would have really, if he had have gone to Forest Hill, would have really stood out there.
Yeah.
Even if he had attempted to actually kill the Levines.
So my next note says Arthur runs his goddamn mouth like a fucking idiot and tries to mansplain murder.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is they actually had Billy call Arthur and say that the deed has been done.
Well, right.
But tell him, I'm in Houston on my way to Mexico.
Yes. Before that though, he calls Arthur and Arthur's like, here's what you got to do.
Oh yeah, told him how to get away with it.
I'm like, what a stupid.
Wear surgical gloves and never take them off. That one phrase just sticks out to me because he told him where.
Yes, mine too. Me too. I did also notice that and was like, Just never take
Take them off. I love these gloves. They're part of me now.
So anyway, as a result of that, both Arthur and Perry are charged with conspiracy to commit murder.
Mm-hmm. And when Billy, quote unquote, makes arrangements for Arthur to pick him up at the Guadalajara airport, there is a FBI agent there instead, because now that all this has happened via phone, they are now into federal crime territory.
Sure. Which seems obvious, but so many things have seemed obvious this whole time that didn't happen. So it's been 10 years now. This is 2006. It's been 10 years since her initial disappearance. Arthur sings like a beautiful bird.
Yes, he does. He just, I know I'm going to prison, but please, can you make it a lesser sentence and maybe not such a bad prison?
Fully throws his own child under the bus.
And tells us what happened.
Which I tend to believe him at this point. I suppose we don't have any other evidence necessarily to support his statement, but he thought that he was going to get 18 months instead of a long time in exchange for this, and I just feel like if you're that willing to throw your own kid under the bus, like, why would he be lying? You know, like, why would you lie and then still, like, implicate your kid, you know? So according to him, Janet has died in a quote unquote accident. He's very adamant that Perry never said he killed her.
Right. But the thing of it is, according to Arthur now, allegedly, they started arguing about the Hope Asbury Sims thing, and she came at him physically, supposedly, and he accidentally picks up a wrench and hits her with it.
There was not. I'm sorry. I find it hard to believe that there was a wrench anywhere in that house.
They never fixed anything.
No. Anywhere in that house, much less easily accessible.
In the inner sanctum of the house.
In the inner, yeah. Like, were they fighting in one of the garages?
If he really wanted to make it a accident, then okay, it got physical and he hit her with his hand. You know, and it did whatever.
Yet another
something
reason,
more believable.
Yet another reason why I think that he's telling the truth in this statement.
Right.
Because again, why would you lie to make it worse?
Yeah.
And why wouldn't you lie? If you're gonna lie, you would want everyone to look better.
Right. No, there's no way that Perry went out to the garage, got a wrench, or went and bought a wrench because there were no wrenches available at the house, and waited for Janet and then attacked her with it. No, that didn't happen.
I mean,
a 120-pound woman attacks a 270-pound man, and he feels the need to grab a wrench to defend himself.
He was very scared. He had never been in a fight before. You didn't know. She could say very mean things when she was angry.
No, I believe what they said was the motive was that he was afraid if she left him or made him leave, that his easy lifestyle would be gone because the Levines would no longer contribute to the household. He would not have his job anymore, and he would have to basically fend for himself like an adult.
Like a human being. I'm positive that that's I mean, that it makes a lot of sense. I just... So they move her body allegedly to Kentucky in the car. Where do you think the kids are at this point? with
They've got
the
to still be in Mexico, or maybe hopefully they've,
well when they've
they're
moved
living with Arthur, so
so
probably in Tennessee with,
when in the timeline did they move the body allegedly?
it was during that 14 days that she was missing. He
Okay,
said that,
so the kids were
because you remember,
really
Arthur actually lived in Tennessee for a while. He left for Mexico shortly after Janet disappeared.
oh no
He didn't,
reason
yeah, for no reason. He just
no reason just decided
cost of living,
yeah no reason
Mexico.
normal me Spanish no it's fine I don't need to anyway okay so I just mean like the kids were probably realistically like with the grandparents at that point.
Yes, they were. When he was arrested for her murder, they automatically transferred. Since Arthur was out of the country, his brother was somewhere across the country, they immediately gave custody to the grandparents, at least on a temporary basis.
Okay. Which somehow makes it even worse that I don't know.
That he was going to have them killed, try to have them killed with his children living there, knowing that their father was in jail for possibly killing their mother. I mean, they're young, but they're not stupid.
Well, right. I mean, and at this point, they're not that young.
No, they're teenagers, at least.
Yeah, they're teenagers. So Arthur says that they went to Kentucky and stayed in a hotel where Perry took a nap because he was tie-tie. And he was very sleepy. And so Perry goes to sleep and lets his extremely elderly father, who owns a Green Beret,
put her in the trunk of a car. And in Arkansas,
I thought it was Kentucky, but
Kentucky. It was Kentucky, my
it was
bad.
Kentucky, where he finds a huge brush pile that he expects is going to be burnt soon.
Mm-hmm.
It's so fucking horrible.
And finds 3 holes that have been dug by the crew that's doing it, puts her clothing in one hole and her in another.
Yep. So he takes the detectives to the place that was, and they don't find anything.
Yeah. But you have to think about how many years. I mean, the way he described the body, it was wrapped in cloth. So it wasn't, the natural process of decay has probably already taken effect,
Right. And also I don't know, the detectives believe Arthur because even though they don't have a body, they say that his story never changes no matter how many times he's asked about it. He is. Whereas
Perry's has been all over the place.
Whereas Perry's has been as all over the place as his facial hair. So then in August of 2006, like almost 10 years to the day of the disappearance, Perry finally goes to trial for her murder. My note here says he continues to be a giant knob.
And he continues to give interviews and express his innocence, even though he was sentenced to 56 years. Part of that was for attempted murder on the Levines and second-degree murder on his wife because they could never found a body.
Yes, and it's my understanding that during the trial he was like the worst kind of witness to defend.
Yeah.
Like just the arrogance.
Well, you have to admit, since he was no longer in Mexico working, whatever he did in Mexico, whatever sub-law he practiced in Mexico, his father's now under arrest. The Levines have cut him off, I'm sure, many years prior. So you would have to imagine he's probably down to a public defender by now.
I don't know. I don't
Maybe
know if that's true or not.
He might have had money, squirreled away somewhere, but
Yeah.
Public defenders are bad lawyers, but I also know people that are public defenders, and they have an astute habit of either wanting to plead things out because they know the majority of their clients are probably guilty.
Yes.
And
It helps you. I mean, you could clear cases faster because they're overworked.
And they don't get paid enough to defend that kind of idiot.
It's the level of idiocy is almost unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost unbelievable. So like Arthur gets this deal that he's going to do 18 months, and then a judge is like, no, no, that's
buried
not
a body.
Gonna
You
happen.
buried
Like,
a dead body.
No, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. So he gets 5 years, but then dies real soon.
Yeah.
Like 4 months into his sentence.
He was sick during the trial. He was actually too sick to stand
right, because that was why he had
heart problems, I think.
Like a taped thing. Like they didn't bring him into the courtroom. They taped his statements and played them for the court.
What? He only served 4 months.
In the end, he got even less time. Well,
that's bad.
That's bad. That I don't know why that hurts me a little bit, and I don't know why.
This is dark humor, folks.
I know.
Michelle and I are masters of dark humor.
So, since when Perry was found guilty of all this stuff, some of which he is undoubtedly guilty of,
at least
some of which he is.
We know he's guilty of trying to kill his.
Yeah. Some of which I'm personally in my heart know that he's guilty of, but we don't really.
We'll probably never know what actually happened.
We'll probably never know what actually.
Unless he finds Jesus, and decides to clear his conscience.
He's Jewish, so.
Well, yeah. I mean, he married into a Jew. And they never said if he was Jewish. I knew the Levines.
Well, so they did mention in the thing that I watched that her family was pretty thrilled that they were getting married.
So he would have had.
He was like a nice Jewish boy.
Okay, cool.
That was.
Okay, so scratch the find Jesus part.
Or I mean, maybe I don't know.
Maybe if a nice rabbi talks to him and.
Weird things happen.
If you want to lie in Mount Sinai, you should cleanse yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Anyway, so since then he has petitioned for a larger jail cell.
Mm-hmm.
He has petitioned for his kids to be sent back to Mexico to live with his Mexico wife.
Who is, let's send them out of the United States back to a developing country.
And then
to live with a single mom now that will have 5 children if they send them back to raise.
Well, they had 4, 5, 6.
6 children.
Didn't we decide it was 6?
Yeah, 6 children.
Because she had 3, and then they had 1, and then he had 2.
So let's let this poor single mom in Mexico raise 6 children. And let's take these kids out of the lap of luxury with their rich grandparents in the United States. Good plan, Terry.
I mean, and at this point, the kids are grown-ups.
They could have said, no, not going back.
But also, I mean, I think in 2006, I guess they would have been teenagers, but.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, he also, this is the icing, the cherry on top of this True Crime Sunday here, is that he also maybe was planning to escape jail. Now, that is speculative and alleged. However, somebody in jail, we'll say a Billy Gibbons type character, alleged that Perry asked him to help him plot an escape.
At least he was wanting to plot something and not just try to run when he's in the yard and climb the fence right in front of the tower guards, which is what I would expect of him.
I know. He was like, I'm pretty fast at running. You zigzag. You just got to zigzag right on out of there. It's no problem. You do a distraction, and
I'll climb the fence.
I zigzag out of the. What we do know about that is that someone, an informant in the jail, said it, which I don't know. Listen, I'm not saying that definitely happened, but I'm saying like it matches his previous his previous MO. But also then shortly thereafter, he was in fact moved to a different jail in Wartburg, Tennessee, which just reminded me what great names places in Tennessee have.
Like Soddy Daisy. That's my
Soddy
favorite.
Daisy.
It used to be
Possum Trot. Big Sandy.
Big Sandy. What's it? Buck Snort.
Buck Snort. I've been to both Buck Snort and Possum Trot. Actually.
And we are not making fun of Tennessee. We both are Tennessee.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, Michelle was born in Tennessee. I was born but I have lived
which
here.
Which is like, it may as well be Tennessee.
Very few people are actually from Nashville. But
except for me.
Yeah.
I'm the only one.
Very few native Nashvillians.
Very few of us. I like to think that I'm kind of a townie at this point.
Yeah. I think
I don't like to think that, but I think it's the case.
I think after 20 years here, I can call myself a Tennessean.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. God. All right. Well, what have we learned?
We have learned that even rich people get caught.
We have learned that money can't buy savvy.
No. And we've learned that just because somebody's rich doesn't mean they're smart.
Yeah.
And we've learned that some people were never meant to be married to decent people.
Yeah, that's the thing. I just feel really bad for like her parents and her kids.
And her. I mean,
and her.
I mean, she was
obviously her.
I mean, she had a miserable marriage and then got beaten to death with a wrench, as far as we know.
Ugh,
You know,
what a terrible way to go. And like by someone that you love, that you think loves you.
yeah, that betrayal. If you think about horrible ways to die, I've always thought that drowning or suffocating would be the worst, but being beaten to death, I think that's right up there.
Yeah. That's a real like personal.
Yeah.
It takes some
definitely a crime of passion.
Deep-seated, horrible anger for someone to do that to someone else.
I'm willing to believe it was probably a crime of passion, that he was angry that she was about to leave him or put him out, and it just...
Yeah. Having said that, I know people are always like, it was a crime of passion. Like, I don't know that there is, for me personally, a time when I would be like that angry or upset that my passion would lead me to beat the shit out of someone that way.
No, I could definitely be pushed to the brink. I think the only way that my passion would maybe lead me to put my hands on somebody is if someone attacked my wife, my fur babies, my mother-in-law, my mom, my dad. I think I could be persuaded to kill somebody at that point in their defense. But just getting angry at somebody about whatever, I don't think I could ever get to that
even if
point.
you were going to lose all your money.
I mean, I could be persuaded to punch them in the nose, but I don't think that.
Sure.
I
think that's the difference. I don't know.
Yeah.
So like
Kill them,
we always say like crime of passion as if. I guess I don't really think that people say crime of passion to give people a pass on things, but it seems like such an easy way to dismiss that kind of stuff as like, oh, that's just human nature. And I just don't I don't think that it is. I think you have to be a
Well,
particular
there are
brand of
true crimes,
asshole.
you know. I think that's why they came up with the different derivative called, justifiable homicide, which is mainly
Mhm.
people that are self-defense or in the defense of others.
Yeah.
That's, but then everything else, okay, yeah, it may be a crime of passion, but it's still a crime and it's
Yeah,
still
but
a murder.
your passion was bad and wrong.
Yeah, your passion's fucked up at that
Your
point.
passion sucks.
Yeah.
God. All right. Well, I made
This
myself
is
sad now.
I'm sorry.
That's all
But
right.
I've enjoyed this tremendously. This has been so much
I
fun.
have too.
So I will have everybody, if you want Michelle to come back, give me a thumbs up on the comments below. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of them.
If you
I'd love
never
to
want
have you
see me
back.
again,
I'd
then
love to
don't
have you
say
back to do another case.
sounds great. You can choose it.
All right.
You
I
can
sure
choose
will.
it, and I'll do my research. Did I do too much research? Did I need to just talk
No, you
more
were
about?
perfect. You were perfect. Sometimes I find myself always taking the lead and kind of
Oh,
asking questions. So it was nice to have somebody that had delved into the case as much as I have, and I
well,
could just actually discuss it.
I can't seed control that much, so you're welcome.
Well, I'm beta, at least my wife says I am, so that
Okay.
fit right in
Well,
with me.
this feels like private talk.
No, just in life. Just in life. Like, I won't walk until she walks. It's just I don't know what it is.
Interesting.
I'll cut this part out.
You don't have to cut anything out. That's fine. You cut out whatever you want.
All
Well,
right.
did we do it?
We did. We're good.
Did we do it?
Yeah. That's a wrap.
Wow. That's
That
a
is
wrap.
a wrap. All right, well, everybody, I'll see you soon again on Keto and Crime and Thought Crime. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to support the podcast or the channel, links are below.